Good morning. This is Action News Jax Sunday.
Good morning. It's Sunday, May 12th, 2019. Welcome to Action News Jax Sunday. I'm Paige Kelton. An Action News Jax investigation reveals a higher percentage of African-American students are suspended from school in Duval County than in any other district in Florida. In our investigation, we uncovered a disparity in punishment, and I asked the Duval County School District if race is playing a role. This fight happened at Sandalwood High School in March of last year. Lisa Anker says the girl on the floor being hit is her daughter. Hours later, she was called to the school.
She was basically punished, packed up, and ready to go by the time I went to pick her up.
Anker says video proved her daughter was attacked, but the school suspended her anyway. Both students are black. I dug through state records and found in Duval County, 70% of all out-of-school suspensions last year involved African-American students, even though they make up only 43% of the total student body. As a parent, what does that say to you?
That is, there's no equality. It needs to be looked into and fixed.
Jackie Simmons is Executive Director of Discipline and Student Services for Duval County Schools. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction to that is, while we recognize that the disproportionality of African-American students being suspended is not just an issue that's germane to Duval County.
He's right. Second behind Duval, Broward County, where 40% of the student body is black, but the group accounts for 65% of all suspensions. Another surprising find, 5 Duval County middle schools had the highest number of suspensions for African-American students. While most of the schools are predominantly African-American, I found one school where the disparity is glaring. At Landmark Middle, 36% of the student body is black, but the group accounts for 70% of all out-of-school suspensions.
We are focused on, in an effort to create some synergy around decreasing that disparity amongst African-American and other ethnic groups.
That effort includes mental health support, peer-to-peer and adult mediation, and something new called restorative justice. That's when parents and students sit down face-to-face to talk about the real issues driving the behavior. Simmons tells me Duval County's 59-page code of conduct ensures punishment guidelines are the same, no matter who the student is or where they go to school. But he adds,
we try to look at each school and each population independently and each student independently.
But Lisa Anker believes that didn't happen in her daughter's case.
It's become a go-to for them. Let's just suspend the kids and it'll go away.
The 18-year-old girl who attacked Anker's daughter was arrested for this fight and pleaded no contest to misdemeanor battery. In this report, the state attorney's office investigators said there was both school surveillance and cell phone video of Anker's daughter being repeatedly hit. When I asked about its handling of this fight, Duval County Schools responded saying, in part, we can confirm that this investigative process was followed in this case. And here at Action News Jax, we believe that providing context to our viewers is one of the most important things we can do. And with that in mind, we'd like to show you a longer look at our interview with Jackie Simmons, Duval County's Executive Director of Discipline and Student Services. We delve into where bias comes from and how the district is addressing it to punish rule-breaking students fairly and equitably. What are some of the criteria that would lead a student to be suspended, an out-of-school suspension?
Well, out-of-school suspension, based on our student code of conduct, items that would lead to that are some of our more serious class 2, 3, and 4 offenses, some offenses around violence, threats, and things of that nature lead to a suspension based on how our student code of conduct is set up.
So things involving violence, fights, threats, things like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The latest data from the Department of Education has Duval County out-of-school suspensions involving black students. Duval County accounts for 13% of the entire state of Florida. In Duval County, the statewide average for out-of-school suspensions for black students is about 39.5%. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction to that is, while we recognize that the disproportionality of African-American students being suspended is not just an issue that's germane to Duval County, it is also a national as well as a statewide issue. What we are committed to in terms of addressing that and beginning to work is to ensure that, number one, we have a code of conduct that reflects that, and that gives schools an even playing field on what consequences any student should receive based on the infraction to make sure that there's equality across the entire district.
So that no matter what student, whether black or white, no matter which school, would be treated the same for the same infraction, no matter what school they go to.
The school will have a menu of service choices for consequences for that student based on what that infraction was. So it takes away the ambiguity of one school doing one thing for a consequence and another school doing a separate thing that does not fall within the choices prescribed in the Student Code of Conduct.
You're the director of discipline. What if this is a nationwide trend, a Florida trend? What's behind it? Why?
Well, I think that you have a lot of factors that go into what happens, and we try to look at each school and each population independently and each student independently. What we're committed to in Duval County is ensuring that, again, we have the right resources in play for schools for the students that need them the most. For example, we just did a tremendous rollout on our mental health pieces. This allows us to not only get ahead of what's happening with students, but also offer them services that's going to help them as the consequence is over. We're also a big restorative practice district, which we utilize restorative justice to ensure, again, not only that kids feel that they have someone that they can talk to before an incident occurs, but they also have some processes in place that after the event has occurred and the school and the student needs to go back into school, we're providing spaces and safe spaces for students to engage in that process. This gives the student what we consider a student voice, and really getting the student voice and buy-in with regard to what's happening in the culture and climate of schools is really, really important. So we'll embrace the differences that are on our different campuses, but also provide a network and opportunities for those students to really get engaged with why students are being suspended, whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're whatever. We want to make sure that all students have an outlet in terms of speaking with someone or getting the appropriate assistance prior to situations becoming to a point that it would end up in a suspension. So,
what would you say to someone who would look at these numbers, that 70% of the out-of-school suspensions in Duval County are African American students, to someone who would think, well, then that's because African American students have more discipline issues than anyone else?
Well, I would say that that's a misnomer. I would think that, you know, we would have the wherewithal to kind of look at each individual on a case-by-case basis, each community on a case-by-case basis, and recognize that there are differences in terms of what numbers say composed to what's really happening in our schools and how our school cultures are. By and large, the majority of our students, by a huge majority of our students, go to school each and every day, and they don't have disciplinary infractions. They go and they follow the rules and regulations of the schools, and they're trying very hard to become great citizens of our city. And we don't spend enough time talking about that 90+% of our student body that does exactly that. So I would challenge them to really become and get engaged with the specific schools that their children or within their community, to really look at that picture from a school or a community standpoint, instead of taking the numbers that are aggregated in a specific way and making determinations about a global system with regard